Once again this week, we have a double dose of goodness. Emphasis on the goodness this time around. We are joined by 13-time Bassmaster Classic qualifier, 6-time Bassmaster winner, former Bass Nation national champion, 2-time Bassmaster Angler of the Year, the prodigy Brandon Palaniuk. But that's not all. We are also joined by a man who has walked with the Silverback gorillas, swam with the Humpback Whales, Kyle Vandever. This week, it is BP and Vandy. Joining me this week,
I'm Bob Cobb from the Bassmaster. Welcome to Mercer.
Welcome all, friends, family, freeloaders, fishing freaks, and of course you, my humpers. Happy hump day to all of you, and welcome in to the Awkwardly Honest Fishing Podcast that goes by my last name, which is Mercer. This is the 197th edition of the Mercer Podcast, and as always, I hope wherever you're watching or listening from, life is treating you well. Been a great week for me. We'll get into that. Had a good time on Saturday. Got to hang out at the Toronto International Boat Show at the Yamaha booth. And thank you to everyone who came out there. It was great to see you all. Had some amazing conversations with some truly amazing folks. I mean, had one dude show up and say, "Hey, I want to sponsor your show." Those are nice things to have happen. We'll see if we can work something out there or how that works. Had a lot of different people from different areas show up and had some real good conversations. Had one couple that traveled all the way from Sarnia, stayed the night at their sister's house in Hamilton, and never been to the boat show, but came because they heard about it in the podcast. So I thank you for that. And to anyone who's listening outside of Ontario, none of those towns make any sense to you, but let's just put it this way. They ventured far to come and say hello. So I thank you all for coming out. Sometimes you may leave something like that and wonder, well, does he really? Does it matter? Yes, it does. I am so thankful for all of you. It was great to see you. And I look forward to seeing more of you folks in the future. You fine folks. I did get a comment last week, and before I get into our next topic, I did get a comment from somebody that said, can you warn us when you're going to talk about football? Here's your warning. I may talk about football, lawn darts, croquet, backgammon, or anything at any particular time. They might just sneak up. But the good news is I got really bad ADD, so I never stay on one topic very long. So I hope not to have upset you with the football chat last week. But here's the bad news. There are going to be more of it this week. I mean, I could try hold it down. I think last week I opened up saying that people get upset when I talk about football, and then I went on to talk about football. But it's like a fart. I mean, you can hold it down, but it's going to come sneaking back. I actually saw a thing on the internet that said that if you hold your farts, they might come out your mouth, which explains some angler's breath. I didn't say that. It was a joke. I joke, I kid. But yeah, it was a big week for the Kansas City Chiefs. And unbelievable game. What a battle between us and the Buffalo Bills. I know you probably don't believe this, but it was hard to watch the Bills lose. I mean, they're an incredible team. Josh Allen is an incredible QB and an incredible human for everything that I know. So it was tough to see that, but I'm a Chiefs fan. So I do feel for the Bills. The Bills Mafia is a little mad at me. I assume some of the fine folks I'm going to talk about in a minute are from said Mafia. But I did say a few weeks ago on this show, outside of the Chiefs, I would love to see the Bills or the Lions win a Super Bowl. And if the Bills had to beat us, I would be cheering for the Bills in the Super Bowl just because they beat us. I'm a weirdo that way. Just because I like one thing doesn't mean I have to hate the other, which seems to be a thing in the world. Not here on this show, because you guys are that's the best thing about this show is the community that's been built around this show. We've tried to keep it positive, and I hear it from every guest. Every guest comes on, and within a week after the show, I hear from them. They're like, man, I can't believe all the great feedback I've got. You guys are a great community that makes a difference, and I thank you for being who you are. In a world full of darkness, and there is some darkness on the internet, so much easier to get traffic with anger and disgruntlement. But in a world full of darkness, you guys are a bright, shining light, and I am proud of all of you. However, I did find some darkness this week. So after the Chiefs win, I posted a little video of me being my excitable self, and I think I said, "We still them Chiefs." And you could hear my family in the background cheering and yelling. I mean, our team won. We were excited. And for the first 12 hours, it was all stuff from you guys, you know, people who subscribe and follow the show and are part of Instagram, you know, follow my Instagram account. And a lot of chirping. I had my Chiefs Kingdom that was celebrating with me, and that was cool. But there was a lot of chirping, and I get it. I can take that. I bring it on. Trust me. I paint a target on myself quite often, so I have no problem with that. But then after like 12 hours, all of a sudden that video started spiking and started taking off. Somebody shared it somewhere. And all of a sudden I started getting the most visceral hate ever on the internet. I mean, just people just hating me. Like I'm talking people wishing I'd die. Hate, a whole different level of hate. Then I started looking at these accounts and I'm like, they don't even follow me. Actually, they don't even have posts. I mean, they're all private, which makes me believe that they're probably children. And very few of them have posts. I didn't even know this existed, but I guess there's people who just part of Instagram and they never post anything. They just run around and argue and throw hate out there, which I want to thank you for, because here's the beautiful thing about Instagram. Love me or hate me, it's interactions, and that is stroking the algorithm, and it helps. So thank you very, very much. And I understand it because, I mean, we're passionate sports fans. Everybody is. There's things that, I mean, I don't know why I'm so addicted to the Chiefs. I mean, literally, it was a childhood decision. It could have been Niners, could have been Chiefs. I went Chiefs, and we lost a lot for a long time. But we're not anymore, and I am enjoying that. But it's foolish that I am this addicted to the Chiefs, or we're all addicted to any sports team. I mean, they don't even know who we are. I mean, I did, however, meet the Hunt family once in Clark Hunt. I got to sit in the owner's suite several years ago. They have the coolest owner's suite in the NFL. Google it if you are so interested. But I got to hang out there for a game. But I don't think Clark Hunt remembers me. So for all intents and purposes, the Chiefs don't know who I am. But they sure mean a lot to me because that's what being a fan of something is. And so I get the passion and the anger. But there'll be more of it this week because if you think the Bills Mafia is an aggressive fan base, well, hello, Philadelphia Eagles. By far my favorite crowd we've ever had at an Elite Series event. I mean, it was insane when we were on the Delaware River, right downtown Philadelphia. I wish we would go there every single year. It was the closest pro fishing's ever got to wrestling, and I love you all for it. But tall order ahead to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. They're an incredible team. And Cook ran all over us. If they had to run them more, it might have been a different result. So if we couldn't stop Cook, stopping Saquon Barkley going to be a whole other challenge. But I have faith. I don't think you can stop him. I think it's going to be a situation where you just hope to curtail him a little bit, control it a little bit. Andy Reid and the Chiefs will figure something out. And if not, I mean, they'll just cheat, like so many fine folks on the internet say, which has become a disturbing thing in the world. Whenever any kind of dynasty or anything goes on. I mean, when Tom Brady was winning, cheaters, it's fixed for the league. When Michael Jordan was winning, they were cheaters. I mean, listen, calls go either direction. I said it 2 weeks ago on the show. Why do we not have there's digital ways to make the right call. Why are we judging from an ump's eye or a ref's eye? I mean, let's embrace technology. It's everything else in our life. So we can tell if the ball crossed the line or if the ball did this or the player did that. You can tell all of this, whether it be through replay, whether it be through a chip in the ball. I mean, let's embrace these things so that people can't argue about things, because there's been a lot of arguing. But what I think we're seeing an amazing quarterback, one of the greatest ever to play that position. And I think what you're seeing is the advantage of success. I mean, we've seen it in fishing. When Kevin Van Dam went on his run, it is amazing. The Chiefs aren't going to be near as nervous as other teams. I mean, they've been to the last 7 AFC championships. This is their 5th out of 6 Super Bowls, and I get it. Some people hate that too, and I understand it, because if I was a fan of any other team but the Chiefs, I'd probably hate it. But I'm a Chiefs fan, and we sucked for a long time, so let me enjoy it. Go Chiefs. All right, that's it. I'm done. I'm not talking about football anymore, okay? Maybe a little bit, but I'll try curtail it. We got a really cool show here this week, a very different show with 2 amazing dudes. Brandon Palaniuk and Kyle Vandever. Brandon, you guys know, obviously, he's been on the show a bunch of times. If you don't know Vandy or Kyle Vandermeer, which I'm having a hard time saying his last name because I never call him by his last name. It's either Vandy or Kyle. He shoots all of Brandon's footage, makes all those incredible... They're cataloging memories together, but basically they travel on the road, and he does all that behind the scenes stuff that you see in Brandon Palaniuk's channel. Well, they have launched a podcast. They launched it 2 years ago, took a 2-year hiatus, but they are back. And their whole feeling behind it is just to have real conversations. Kind of conversations that quite often people don't have. And something you've heard me push on this show over and over again is positivity. And that's something that Brandon's always promoted. It's something that the world needs more of. And it's so cool to see other parts of the fishing industry jumping on. Like, you know, when I first started screaming about we need to be more positive, fishing is positive. That's why we do this. It's not it's not a war, us against them. It's we love fishing. And positivity is a good thing. And they're going to have some real conversations on that show. And they're just 2 amazing dudes. I mean, Palaniuk's life is well documented and crazy, but Kyle's is nuts too. I mean, Kyle, when he's not shooting stuff on the Elite Series, he is literally walking with silverback gorillas, swimming with the humpback whales. I mean, he does some of the most incredible things. Like I literally went out on the St. Lawrence River one day, spent 3 days shooting underwater footage with bass, and thought I was the king of the world. And that night I went on Instagram and saw Kyle swimming with humpback whales. And I'm like, bass are cool too, you know? But they are 2 of the most positive, 2 people who are just living life to the fullest, not foolest, but to the fullest. You think listen to Kyle. I mean, I thought Kyle and Brandon were going to be together for this podcast, but it turns out Kyle got a hankering to head to the Baja. And on the way down, he's going to stop and do some surfing, then get to Baja and do some dirt biking. I mean, his life is basically the Lost Boys. But they have really cool lives, and they have a really cool podcast. The world does not need another podcast, but it needs this one. Because plain and simple, they're going to have the conversations that you don't hear a lot of places. And it's going to help you learn. All of us learn together. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to think, hey, maybe when I grow up, nothing bad will happen in my family. There'll be no sadness. And as I've aged, I realized that that's not real. Bad stuff happens to everybody. Sad stuff happens to everybody. But when you surround yourself with positivity, when you surround yourself with goodness, when you absorb good conversations, you get through that stuff a little easier. And I really think that their podcast is going to help with a lot of that. It doesn't even have a name. We'll talk about that too. Who knows what the name is, but good conversations will be had, and I encourage you all to make sure you go and subscribe to Brandon Palaniuk's YouTube channel. I will put the link down below. I'll put it in the comments. I'll put it in the description. Let's blow up his YouTube channel. Do yourself a favor. Listen to their first podcast. It is well worth it. But before you do all that, let's just join them right now. BP and Vandy. You went 0 to 100. You guys are full-on podcasters. The average length, just so you know, of the existence of a podcast is 7 episodes. You guys are knocking right on the door. I mean, you did 5 of them 2 years ago. And you did 1 of them already. And I think you've recorded another. So, I mean, you've...
Technically, we're above average. I think we're up to 8 now. Once we published the last one me and Kyle did. I just finished another one this morning with the guy that got me started fishing. So I feel like maybe we're turning the corner. This thing actually might stick around.
Why? Why now? Why did you guys decide to do this? I mean, there is seemingly limitless podcasts out there. Why now?
I think the timing for me kind of felt right.
Wait till the market is totally full. Like,
yeah, but it wasn't about the market.
I like my competition to be stronger.
For me, it wasn't about like, oh, what is everyone else doing? It was really just about us having a conversation and then just putting it out there. The reason for putting it out there, we're already having a lot of the same conversations. I guess what drove me to do it is that even 2.5 years later, since we had filmed the last one, I still had people asking for us to bring it back.
Yeah.
So I'm like, in my mind, I thought if there's people 2.5 years later are still holding on to what we did before and they're asking for us to bring that back, there had to be something special. So if those 2 or 3 people are willing to listen again, then we'll put it out there again. And we just did the first one, and then it seemed like it got some decent feedback, and then we did another one, and that one hasn't been out yet, so who knows.
And I think like what Brandon said too is like we are having these conversations a lot outside of just being around each other, and it's stuff that like we think is important, and I think it relates to the outdoors in so many ways, and people deal with it, and I don't think as many people talk about it in some of those aspects. So and me, Brandon, and Carl have these conversations all the time, and it's I think it's something people appreciate to hear too.
I dig it. That's the right reason to do it from the beginning, really. I mean, ultimately, every single podcast I know is successful. Bottom line, they enjoy doing it. They enjoy having the conversations that they're having. Does it have a name?
As it stands right now, it's the Outdoor Burrito.
All right.
Whether or not that stays the name is to be determined. That's just what it became initially because we couldn't think of a name, and we're like, well, we love burritos and we love the outdoors. And then if you think about a burrito, it's like a bunch of things that you like together. And, it's going to be like hunting and fishing and life things. And it's like, oh, it's an outdoor burrito.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you like burritos and you like the outdoors. So it's the outdoor burrito.
Yeah. I would have done it like, I would have just called it Palaniuk. But then nobody would have been able to pronounce it or spell it or any of that. So not all of us are as lucky as you.
Well, no, you'd have to be a real arrogant bastard to call your show out.
We could have called it Vandy. Maybe we should have just called it Vandy's.
I'm all for that.
Hammer Podcast.
Hammer Podcast. That's too close to the Haynes stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you ever talk about burritos or no?
Tiff literally just posted something about burritos.
Yeah.
Tiff talks about burritos more than us.
Yeah. I feel like you're attracting one frustrated viewer. Like when people, one of the mistakes I would say of this podcast is fishing or outdoors is nowhere in it. And literally the only reason it's called Mercer is, I'm sure viewers of this show have heard, I had a logo for another show that we were working on with the network.
Yeah.
And we were just like, hey, let's do this. But one of the negatives is it doesn't have outdoors in it. And because when people search podcasts, so I feel like a certain genre of people who search the outdoors will be very satisfied, and you'll piss off people looking for burrito info.
Yeah, we did have what did you see that comment? Kyle, guy was like, I came here for a fishing podcast, but I ended up getting so much more. I was like,
really?
Well, we talk about fishing, but it's like it's more what lessons do we get from fishing, right? From the tournaments, from the wins or from the losses. And it's like a deeper dive into, I guess, kind of the mental side of that.
That's where you live. That's your home. Like,
yeah,
you're a deep dude.
Drive a lot.
Right?
I got a lot of time to think.
Well, no, but you're a young clun, I feel.
Yeah.
Vandy, you think I'm wrong in that assessment?
No, I think Brandon's a pretty deep person and likes to think about a lot of things. And I think those conversations, we've had a lot of talks in the car and the truck, and he's insightful in a lot of ways. And it's a unique thing to have. And like, I don't know if you can attest to this too, Brandon, like, one of the conversations I remember, maybe not the whole conversation, just what the conversation as a whole was, is like when we were going to Santee Cooper, the week he won, I will never forget that ride to Santee. It was like, it was an incredible, like we were part of it. It was like a 5-hour drive, but we were singing to like just blaring out music. Then we'd have like this deep talk, and it was just like you're hanging out with your buddy for 5 hours and you kind of shoot the shit. And then you have like it's just a really unique environment to be able to talk to Brandon in general. And he's a thinker.
I think that's something that the outdoors gives to everybody. Like, I think that's why outdoors people, whether it be anglers, whether it be hunters, whether it be photographers, I mean, you have like that connection because you've already decided that matters to you. But it also, I think there's no distractions. Like when you're on the road or when you're hiking, when you're fishing, I mean, there's no distractions. And you actually, I mean, if you sat down in a leather chair, a lot of people wouldn't say the crap that they would say when they're in those other situations.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. You don't have those distractions. There's only so much you can do. And I honestly believe, me and Kyle have talked about this, that the way that the drive to Santee went ultimately led to part of the reason that I won. Because it's like you start off the week in such a good mental space and so relaxed and with that clarity. And it ended up helping and made that tournament week so much fun. I mean, maybe if I didn't catch them, it wouldn't have obviously felt as fun, but I feel like I did catch them because that was part of it, right? Is that it made me go into a headspace where it was just enjoyable. Like everything was enjoyable and everything seemed like it was just going right. So then the fishing felt like it was going right, and it didn't seem like any decision was the wrong decision.
What? So why not just do that in the way to every damn tournament?
I don't know that you can just purposefully create that.
Yeah.
I think it comes and goes. I don't know why that is. But I think I don't know. I think it's all connected. It's just you don't always know how to connect them.
Yeah.
Vandy, can you tell when you're shooting him? Can you tell when he's not there and when he's 100% in there?
Yeah, I think, and like he said, it's like there's not an equation to get him there. I think it's like people talk about it when they're fishing or whatnot. It's like you're fishing free. Like it's easy. Everything, there's a flow to it, and getting into that flow is the situation just sets itself up, and it could be whatever reason. But like, you can tell when someone's in a flow, and you can tell when someone is pressing. And when you're pressing, you're trying so hard and it just doesn't work. There's a lot of variables in there, but yeah, I can tell when Brandon fishes, or even like in life in some ways, like you're just trying too hard and you're like, all right, you're stressing yourself out and you're just running the loop. And it's interesting, those two things and how they correlate.
Can you tell me this year when you recognize that, maybe, so I don't have another year like last year? Be like, hey, you're trying too hard. You're not in the flow. Maybe feeling
last year had a couple moments where it was like, on the other end of the camera, you're like, what do you say at this point? Like, what can you like what is acceptable to be said? Can I talk shit, or do I have to kind of tone it down and be like, you're gonna get them next time, bud? Like,
yeah,
there's a certain mood that you have to read, I guess.
Yeah.
I think sometimes saying something too that's not a guaranteed way to fix it. You know what I mean? Like it'd be like, you're aware of you're not getting the result you want, and all of a sudden, the best way to make somebody mad, they can be totally happy. But if you just, like, three of us get together and we're gonna meet for lunch, and I just go, "Hey, Kyle, you mad? Are you mad, Kyle? Kyle, are you mad? No, I'm fine. No. Are you mad, Kyle?" Within 5 minutes, he's gonna be so pissed off. So it's not like it's a weird situation. And then you're also, I would imagine, Kyle, battling it's your job to capture the highs and lows of life on the elites. So it's got to be a weird situation to be in when you're as close as you guys are.
Yeah, I think the dynamic that we have is pretty good on the water, at least, to like, we're talking and joking back and forth sometimes. And Brandon, I'll give it to him, is he's always, you've never really had a moment where you're, frustrated at me, or any, like, it's never external, which is really important. And I think Brandon just like handles himself really well on the water. But there are moments where you can tell he's having a tough time, and you're like,
there was one time
that you were pissed at him.
Last year when you ran the 5-pounder over on the bed.
That was, yeah. There's Dallas Smith. That's Dallas Smith. That's our boat driver in Lake Fork. No, but there's a few times I've made you mad. I've said some smart stuff too, though. Like,
no,
I've said some insightful
that's really the
things.
only time that I might have snapped on Kyle a little bit, and it followed immediately after me breaking off like a 9.5-pounder at Fork.
Oh,
and so I was on pins and needles, and then I'm in this tiny little canal, and I break off this 9.5 on the right side, and on the left side there's like a 5-pounder swimming around on bed, and I tell him just to stay in the middle. Well, Kyle's, in all fairness, trying to do his job, but all I hear is and he's just, I look back and they're literally driving over like the grass hole where it wasn't even really grass. It was like brush and, those like little stick up things. And they're just mowing down where this fish just was that I was going to plan on coming back to. And yeah, I got on him a little bit. I think I started off getting on Dallas, and then Dallas explained that it was your fault. So then I had to apologize to Dallas.
I had to get the angle, man.
But most of the time, Kyle will say something, and I think it just gets me talking, and then I will a lot of times talk my way through the situation, and that in a way helps. It's like, rather than just keeping it inside and letting it fester in my brain, it's almost like I'm physically spewing it out of my body to let it go. I think it helps sometimes. Champlain was a good example of that.
Yeah.
What happened? What happened on Champlain?
Champlain day one when my live wells went out and I had 13
Oh,
pounds.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, sweet. It's 9:30. I'm holding a 4-pounder in my hand and I got 13 pounds of dead fish. Like, this would call out all 5 of the fish I have in there. And I'm like, dude, just got to throw it back. My day's done. Like, really, like, the whole tournament is shot at that point.
Yeah.
Which is rare for you in your entire freaking career, last year was the blip. In your entire career,
Yeah.
you made the classic every year. You've fished championship even when you weren't fishing with bass. Right? Am I
Yeah.
correct on that stat? Good.
Yeah.
Okay. That would have been embarrassing. But when you do have a year like last year, do you in your head, because you are the most positive person I know, if not the, definitely top 3. Do you ever start to think, yeah, no, this season's not for me? Like there's something, or is it, or is that just a kick in the nuts at the end of the year when you're just like, when it is not for you, really?
I think you question why. You're always questioning, like, why did that happen? Why did I
Yeah.
lose that one? But man, I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason. Even the hard years like that. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I'm like, why? I think it was after me and Kyle did our last podcast. And I was thinking, like, maybe it was just so that I spent more time with my kids on the
Yeah.
road. I don't know if that is the reason or not. I'm like, maybe I just missed more cuts because by design I was supposed to spend more time with my kids. Like, our youngest kid was a little bit more difficult. She needed more attention, more time. Uh, and so maybe I was just by design supposed to help with that more. You don't, I may never figure it out, but that was just one thing I could look at and say, well, there's a positive from those bad situations. I think the hardest thing for me last year was to let go, and this was like more in the end of the year, but the hardest thing was to let go of the fact that I might not make the classic.
Yeah.
Because I had always made it, and that was a part of my identity and, like, and part of, I guess, my ego a little bit of, like, yeah, I'm going to make the classic every year. And that didn't happen. And it took a lot of, I guess, kind of inner reflection to let that go. Like, that's a part of who I am, but that's not who I am. Like, that
Yeah.
making the classic every year isn't the determining factor of whether or not my kids are going to run up and give me a hug at the end of the day. And so it, but for a while, that was the driving force. I was like, don't miss the classic every year. Like, every guy on the elite says, hey, goal 1, make the classic. And so I do that same thing. I'm going to go into this next year with the same thought process. Make the classic. Because if you're not in it, you can't win it. But also being okay with the fact that if things don't go how you plan, there's a reason for it. And I guess making sure that that's not it can be the driving force, but you have to be careful of where that comes from. Like, why it's a driving force.
Yeah.
If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Did it make last season tougher to shoot, Kyle? I mean,
In some ways, yeah. I think obviously people want to see people catching fish and winning tournaments. But I think in some way there's a lot of drawing from, like we always say, is like you win or you learn. And last year we did a lot
You
of
learned
learning, I felt like.
a lot of learning.
with a
And
master's degree.
it was a full 4 years of learning. But no, I think the way Brandon sorts things through, and I think people can maybe get some value from watching the videos and understanding, like, I know it wasn't last year, but at Lay Lake, that was a tough one. And the way Brandon dealt with it and championed that moment was special. And I think, like, shooting and telling a story of every tournament, there's little things in there that there's little variables, and I think a lot of times like those are the key things: how you handle a loss, or how important family is to you, or like it could be as simple as like I think the ones that you win tournaments are flashy and fun, but there's so much more value in the ones that you struggle in. And I think last year, like there was a lot of like stories in that struggle and why does this happen? And the year you win AOI, you catch every fish, you don't lose a fish. Like, and this last year is like you lose fish that you should catch every time. So just it's interesting how that dynamic goes and trying to tell that story.
Speaking of dynamics, you guys have an interesting dynamic. I think what you guys are doing is incredible. I mean, I actually told Brandon not to do it when he first told me. Not it wasn't you, Kyle, at the time, but I was like, "Oh, are you nuts?" Like when he said he was going to
Everyone
chronicle.
did.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, he had just at that point I thought, hey, he's been on the Elite Series. You had some stability in your life, I would say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you weren't that kid that's fighting anymore. Like just to stay there, everybody knew you were around. You were a commodity, but you just think, man, this is his chance to fill the freezer full of meat. And then he's like, I'm going to chronicle it all. And I'm like, yeah, it's a huge distraction. But who knew he was a weirdo? That I think that distraction is actually a benefit. And you talked about that, like when you are able to talk through things.
Yeah.
I mean, when there's a camera there, you don't look near as insane as when you're talking through things and there's no camera. But what's really unique to me, and I mean, I don't think I'm breaking any news, but you guys went to high school together, but did not have any, like, I mean, you knew each other, but it wasn't like, hey, dude, one day we're gonna live this cool life on the road. Like, tell me how it came together and like how strange that is. Do you guys sit back and be like, wow,
Yeah.
who thunk
Every
about
once in a
that?
while, there'll be a moment where like, this is not where we thought we were going to end up. Like if you asked either one of us in high school back then, there's no way either one of us would have predicted that the two of us would spend as much time together as we do, right? That Kyle was going to be filming the Bassmaster Elite Series for me. I mean, heck, when I was in high school, I didn't even know if I was going to be fishing the elites. I was still trying to qualify, right? So to think of all the variables that have to come together to do that is pretty insane. Like we talked about it on the first podcast that we did of us being in Japan and just looking at each other while we're singing karaoke in a Japanese bar, singing Garth Brooks' "Friends in Low Places." The fact that was where our life led us to in that moment was so funny to both of us. I mean, really, ultimately, it came down to that. I was working with GoPro at the time in 2017 when I decided to start it, and I was trying to find a guy that could fill that role. And there was a guy that had worked at GoPro, Brandon Nelson, and he ended up filming for me that first year. Well, the next year, it was a couple weeks out, and he wasn't going to be able to fill that role. And so I was in a scramble because I had filmed that first year. I had sold a sponsorship based around that video series to go RVing. And here I was 2 weeks before the season starts, and I don't have a guy to film it. So I was scrambling, and Tiff's like, what about that friend of yours that you showed me that wedding video he filmed? I'm like, no, like there's no way he's going to do it. And I honestly kept looking around for people. And I mean, this is nothing against Kyle, but he was like kind of last resort.
Some things never change.
And that's why it was by design. I was like, well, let me see if he can do it. Cause I have to fulfill these deliverables that I sold. I have to have somebody film these. And he just jumped right in. He said, yeah, I've got weddings, this tournament, and this one, I think. So he missed a couple that first year, and then he filmed all the rest of them. I mean, like 2 weeks later, he was staying in our camper at Lake Martin, ripping down the lake. He'd never even been in a bass boat.
Yeah.
And
I legit thought you guys fished with bobbers, dude. That's how much fishing knowledge I had.
yeah,
Like,
but he crushed it. The first one, I remember when he sent me the video. I'll let Kyle tell the story of him almost losing all of the entire footage. But once he got his footage back, the edit was amazing. And that was almost 60 tournaments ago.
but it was kind of a little bit, it felt natural in ways like that. I think you'd probably say that. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but like Lake Martin, like we had fun. Like we both like, I remember I don't know if you made the cut. Yeah, you didn't make the cut. And we went out and did something and we just were having fun. Like it was like we were just two goofers just out there having a great time. And yeah, just like it felt natural and good. And like I think that's like to this day, like it's just like Brandon's like my bigger brother, and I would have never like guessed that in high school. Like we knew of each other, but just never hung out.
Yeah.
Did we ever post that ET video?
What?
I don't know if we did. That's like that's a whole. I think you've posted something. We've filmed a lot of really goofy stuff, Dave.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's like just never made it out there, but that's one of the moments where I think we both realized we still both had a like 13-year-old boy sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember
males do. I think most males do, dude.
Yeah.
Because I'm rapidly aging and I still laugh at farts. It's
probably why
we
get along so well.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the people that are willing to accept that that's where you are and you're going to laugh about that kind of stuff. And I don't even remember why I did it. And we're going to have to find the video to even remember that, the context of it. But I just remember like pointing up and being like, E.T. phone home?
You did it perfectly too. You nailed it.
Very good. It's very good.
Yeah, lots of funny moments in there.
I remember when you first told me about Kyle. I remember he was in his mess and he was like, there's this guy I went to school with. He does wedding videos and I think he's done some snowboard videos. I remember him saying, but he doesn't know anything about fishing. And the rest is history. Kyle, how are you so good at I mean, dude, you didn't just start shooting you're totally think I'm going to give you a compliment right now. You're very good at making videos, but how are you so good at assimilating with a family? Because all of a sudden you re-meet this, like I'm thinking like there's a lot of people I haven't seen since high school. And the last thing I want to do is stay in a trailer with them and crunch out one in the morning with them. Like there's so many horrible thoughts, but you seem to have like fit into that seamlessly.
And I think a little bit of that is just the right people. And I think it just kind of, it's grown to be its own thing. And now it's like Brendan having the two little girls and like him and Tiff getting married and like being there for all that. It's like, it's natural. And it just feels like, like I show up and the girls are just happy. Like the little, like Cora and Kira, it's cool to see them. But yeah, I think kind of like the first little bit, that's always like you get thrust into a situation like that. And you're like, I don't know how to act. And like, it just, everything I think that we've done has come fairly natural. Like in that sense. What are you smiling about?
I'm just thinking about the fact of like when you bring up of how bougie you've gotten over the years, you know, when you first were in the camper, kind of like tiptoe around and, you know, like not really want to be too much of a presence. Now he's like, you know, starts making dinner requests, coffee creamer requests, you know, he's very particular on certain things. He wants a fresh towel every day. And, you know, I mean, it's a pretty good.
Once you get to become a veteran, you got to start making demands, dude.
Yeah.
Like I got snack preferences when I'm on the boat. There's a lot of things it's a privilege you earn.
Yeah. Can I get my grapes off the stem, please? I don't want them. It's too difficult to eat them.
How does Tiff deal with both of us, dude?
She's a saint.
She is.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just have to look at how Kyle lives when he's not shooting fish and stuff. He's out like socializing with giant freaking gorillas and swimming with humpback whales and staying, like the places where you go, like most people, when you're flipping through Instagram or whatever, social media is draining part of your life, but you come across this place where they have condos and they're on the water. Like you're in your own little thing and you got a water slide. That's where he freaking stays. I mean, he's got high standards.
Hey, classy now. No, I feel like I come
Has his
from.
bed sitting behind him right now.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
there's that.
funny you say that too. Is like, I shoot a bit of like the travel stuff too, and I was in Baja, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I was sleeping in the dirt in the tent, and it was just like there was a mass amount of dirt on the ground, and just like a mess. Like it was just really rough, and we were cowboy camping, basically sleeping in the dirt, and then flash forward a week and a half later, and I'm in like a safari lodge that's like one of the most luxurious in the world. And I look at Brooks, who I shoot the filming stuff with, or the travel stuff with, and he's like, you could not live in two separate worlds. Like I live in like the most dirtbag world, and then I like spend a week in like the most luxurious world. And it's definitely a mix for sure.
So where does tour life fit in the middle of that? Is that
Tour life's like
about right in the middle?
Yeah.
Today's high-tech fishing world can be a real pain in the neck, especially if you're running the wrong mount. Beat Down Outdoors, they bring the graph to you. And they support this podcast and care enough about you to make this a short ad read. Check out Beat Down Outdoors. Now back to the show. So what has to happen with this podcast for you two to deem it a success?
Oh, it's a great question. I would say it really, for me, it just needs to, if each episode could positively impact one person, then that's a success for me.
Yeah. I think it's also bringing up things that we all deal with but don't talk about. And I think it allows people to understand that you're not alone in those things too. And like men in the outdoors generally have, like, we don't talk about stuff occasionally. And I think when that comes up, we do talk about it to our buddies, but to know like there's a mass out there that deal with hard things and doing the things that are tough, that are talking about them, and sharing that with your friends, it's to know that you're not alone in that. And I think that's like, to us, like we always talk about those things, and to share that with people and to let people know that they're not alone in that struggle, maybe.
There's a power in that, not just for the people listening, but for, I would think, you guys. I mean,
100%.
because just like that conversation you started off talking about, between the two of you in a truck cab, you feel better after those moments when you have those conversations.
Yeah, 100%. It's almost like a venting avenue, right? Of being able to just speak out the things. And in the ones that we've done so far, we don't have a script. We went back and forth on the last one forever of like, what are we actually going to talk about? And eventually we push record, and then we see where it goes, and where that conversation leads. And I think there is power in that, of just talking about those things, because we both get to live really cool lives. Really, all three of us on here get to live incredible lives. All the things that we wanted to do when we were in our teens and our 20s, right? Like we have gotten to those places, but it still doesn't come without struggle. So there's a lot of things, especially on the mental health side of things, that it's like cancer. It doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, living a dream, working in a sweatshop. It doesn't matter. It is unbiased to anybody, right? And so those things can affect people, and it's a way of, if there's things that we have dealt with, gotten past them, maybe someone else can relate to that and get through it too. Eventually we're going to have you on, and you're going to hopefully spread some wisdom amongst your many years.
Well, I don't know how much wisdom you'll get, but I'll spread something.
Yeah.
I'll keep moving the hole that makes the words. All right, let me play devil's advocate, because
Yeah.
you're going to hear this. You guys are both pretty young guys that life has worked out pretty good for you. What are you going to say to somebody who says, "Oh, those guys don't know what they're talking about. They haven't lived as long as I've lived. They haven't lived through what I've lived."
You want to start?
I think, yeah. I think with everything that we understand that we don't know everything, obviously. But I think the biggest thing is like with any sort of success comes a struggle and sacrifice. And those are things I think Brandon's been very clear about how he's dealt with those things. And Brandon had to give up things and to accomplish what he's done with his life. And same with me in varying degrees, but it's, I think there's a lot of knowledge there and stuff that we can share. And like, it's not that we know everything. We just want to have a discussion of like, hey, like we want to talk to people about, hey, like, how do you feel about this? Like, we're not experts. None of us are, but like, we just want to have a conversation and talk about like, hey, like, what does this make you feel? Or like when you were hunting and did this and like, what was this hard struggle that you got through, or fishing, or like anything in the outdoors that relates to some sort of like mental aspect, I think is really important. And like anybody that's went on a hunting trip or any sort of fishing adventure like knows there's a struggle to it, like in some sense, and you can gain a lot out of that. And I think what we want to do is just have those conversations.
Yeah.
Sorry, you had something to add, Brandon?
No, I was like, he nailed it. It's not the fact that we know everything. It's just sharing the experiences we've had. And if we continue to do this, we're going to continue to have more experiences, right? More laughter, more heartache. Like, that's life. So you're constantly going to have this roller coaster of ups and downs and peaks and valleys. But as long as the trajectory from the start of your life to whenever it ends is a upward average, right? As long as you could draw a line across those peaks and valleys and it's moving to the right and it's moving up, doesn't matter what angle that trajectory is, you're making a positive movement through your life. And so it's not that we know everything, because we don't. And I want to have conversations with people that are smarter than us, because there's a lot of them, people that have dealt with different situations, so that we can learn from those. Other people can learn from them. The conversation I just had this morning before we hopped on here was with the guy that got me started bass fishing. He's the first guy I stepped on a bass boat with. And still today, I learned things. And I've had thousands of conversations with him over the last 27, 28 years. But within an hour and 15 minutes, there was still a lot of wisdom in there that I gained from it.
Yeah.
Because he's at a different spot in his life now than he was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So he's able to have a different perspective on things that maybe he didn't then. So we're all evolving and learning together.
Yeah. And everybody's truth is their own personal truth, I think. Like just because you think, oh, why would you be upset about that? Or why would this bother you?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got their own road that they took there. So you don't know how certain things, it's like taking somebody who has got some post-traumatic stress about something. They're going to deal with something totally different than you, but it's because of all the things that they've seen in their life that you haven't seen. And there's other areas where you've seen things that they haven't seen. And
100%.
Yeah, it's pretty complex, but I think just having conversations is the perfect answer, just because nobody talks about any of those sort of things. And ultimately, it's not going to freaking be for everybody. That's one thing I know about podcasts. Not every podcast is for every, there's some people that I'm sure will tune in and just be like, just tell me how many strands you like on a spinnerbait, dang
Oh yeah.
it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and there's plenty of that out there.
Yeah,
And
a lot.
you can find that. But
Yeah.
it's there's not an end goal for it. It's just having the conversations publicly that we were already having.
Yeah.
The conversations we were having in the truck. Now we're just having them on camera.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. All that's wrapped up together in a burrito.
Yep.
Exactly.
Totally.
Exactly.
You guys both live really idealistic lives, I think, in many ways. You're both chasing dreams, chasing what motivates you both? Like, if you had to pick a few things that motivate you to be that better person year in, year out, what is it?
Take it away.
I think for myself, and maybe Brandon can attest to this too, is for him is just bettering ourselves, whether that be in the competition side of things or professionally, or just being a better man and just being a better friend, being a better brother. And that for me is something that's important. I think I just enjoy trying to grow and become a better filmmaker. I want to tell stories of the outdoors, and I want to tell that with people in it that have some sort of growth through it, and there's a storyline. And I love hunting and fishing now, and snowboarding and all of those things, and I want to become a better storyteller in that. And with Brandon, hopefully, and that's one of the things we've always talked about, is like enjoying working with people and being around people that you work with, because it just makes work that much more purposeful. And we have a lot, like, I feel like just even doing what we're doing with the tournament series, we have a lot of purpose in it. And like, there's a lot of fun that we get to have in between. And it's just, I think for me, ultimately, it's just about growing and become a better filmmaker, become a better friend, and just being better at that.
Does the result have anything to do with that? Meaning that, like, you work in a creative space, so you shoot a bunch of footage, you cut it together. The feeling that you have when you initially cut it together, that gets muted, obviously, after you watch it so many times. But does the result of that video have anything to do? Meaning that if you put one tournament out and it gets 150,000 plays, is that, like, does that change, or do you know from the moment when you've created it that you're like, what you got out of it, you've already gotten out of it?
I think a little bit of it is obviously how a tournament goes affects what we get, but I don't think
Yeah.
the results of views is necessarily our goal. Obviously, it feels great when you get 100,000 views on a video, but I think stories that are like Lay Lake is one of my favorite videos that we've done, or Pickwick, and they just carry story. It doesn't mean Brandon won; it was a good tournament, but like, a lot of it is just like, if there's when there's a good video and there's a good story that goes with it, and I'm excited to go in and cut something like that, because there's a bit of drama to it. There's a bit of like that anticipation of like the ups and downs, and like there's just a really interesting storyline. But it's hard to like, I obviously we want to see views and we want to see the numbers and stuff, but I think like a good video to me is when we want to watch them, you know what I mean? And like those videos to me, when I want to rewatch a video, is special.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the same. I think that's a healthy, if you're like that, you're a little more healthy. Like, if you're addicted to the views, and everybody who's ever posted that's one of the grossest things about social media, that, there's a result bar, there's a scoreboard through your whole life. And you imagine how much that messes with people growing up and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, as long as you're happy with it, like, I mean, hey, this conversation is a prime example. If we literally said, hey, let's just talk about the 3 worst dirty secrets we know on tour. Between us, we got 9 of them. This will be a hit freaking podcast and get 10 times the amount of plays. And as frustrating as it for our viewers, is we're not doing that.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
But you get to me, it's about the feeling you get. Like, at the end of it, you should feel better.
Yeah, I think we're hardwired just over time to have a sense of validation from others.
Yeah.
Right. We take it all the way back to like a tribal mentality. You wanted the validation from other people. Like you were a good hunter, a good gatherer. You wanted to come back, show that you were successful, and you wanted those people to validate you. That is hardwired into our brain. The problem with views being your source of validation, or other people liking that video or watching it, is that bucket is then never satisfied
ever.
Because even if you get 100,000 views, you have to then do that again on the next one. And if you don't, then you're let down. So if that's your source of validation, that's a very slippery slope. And it's going, ultimately, I feel like at the end of the day, it's going to take away from the enjoyment of what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
If that's the end result that you're chasing. Like I don't have a big fancy trophy display case because those aren't the thing that I'm chasing.
You're also never home.
The what? Yeah.
You're also never home.
Yeah. Wouldn't do me any good. I think the things that drive you change over time. Right? As you get older, as your circumstances change in your life, those things that give you purpose or those things that are a driving force to be better are different. I'm sure you, like when you had kids, it changes.
Oh yeah.
What your purpose is, or that driving force. Doesn't mean that you do something differently or you change focus of what you're trying to accomplish, but you do it with a different lens or through a different lens. And so I think it's important to constantly keep evolving.
Yeah.
That's what Kyle was talking about. Like just continue to be better than you were the day before. And then we've talked about that plenty of times on here.
And you also, I think you also end up, it's the balance as you move through life. Like, I mean, when I first met you, dude, you cared about one thing, being the 100%. Best bass angler. You didn't give a crap where you slept. You didn't give a crap, but you just wanted to be the best at that. And you've done freaking pretty good. But as
all I cared about was winning.
Yeah. But as life goes on, you still really, I mean, you're still a very competitive person, but it has to, like, if you care about winning as much as you cared, like, I mean, doesn't it seem normal that you shouldn't care about it? Like, you care about it, you're a competitor, but it's not all obsessing.
No, and I think it's understanding where that line lies. Like, I'm just as competitive as the next guy, but I'm also not willing to push the limits or give up like my integrity on doing that. And so I'm more worried about like what my kids are going to think of me when it's all said and done. Like, what are they going to look back on my career? And I don't want it to just be, oh, my dad made a couple $1 million catching bass in tournaments and won this many trophies.
Yeah.
Like I don't want it to just be a stat sheet that someone reads down.
And I think also too, one of the things that Brennan kind of touches on too is like, after in the video you won the AOI at lacrosse, I remember that night you just got done, Carl was over, and we were just like hanging out like in the camper, and I just remember like the trophies in the corner, and like you're holding Cora, and like Carl has Riva, and you guys are just like, the trophy doesn't matter. Like the trophy could have been in the garbage at that point. Like like it just like was something that like it just showed like what really meant something to you. And I think that's like an example of like what the videos, like looking back on that in 15 years, you're gonna be like, of course, like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's it. That's life.
It's more the experience than the actual hardware or title itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and look at horrible situation that we saw in the last few weeks. All those houses that were lost in LA. Nobody was running back to get their trophies.
Yeah.
They were running back to get their real trophies. And
Yeah.
maybe, you never know, in LA there might have been a few that I need my Screen Actors Guild Award. But it ultimately, a healthy life, you know, your trophy, you're surrounded by your trophies every single day.
Yep.
Your life is your trophy. We are getting super motivational here. People are, do you worry that there'll be people that are just like, I don't care about that?
It's your podcast, not ours.
No, I meant on your podcast. They'll care about what I say. Come on. Clearly.
Yeah, I was like, well, this is your podcast, Dave. So whatever direction you want to take, it's up to you.
But as soon as I saw what you guys did, I was like, come on here, because I just think I posted last week when it came out. I'm like, the last thing the world needs is another podcast, but it needs this world, because I think you guys have this podcast, because I think you guys have a unique chemistry, like in the way that you're just two very interesting dudes, and you're able to have conversations comfortably about things that a lot of people aren't comfortable in doing. Is there
that doesn't just happen overnight? And I guess the views aren't the driving factor. You know, it's funny, even when we started doing the first one, we'd only done maybe 3 episodes, and I had some companies contacting me asking about sponsoring it. And I pushed back. I'm like, whoa, I don't even know if we're gonna keep doing this thing. Like, I don't want it to become something that I feel like I have to do. I want to continue to do it because we want to do it. And I feel like that's how it started. And it ended that way too. It's not like it ended for any reason other than the fact that we just got busy. And now I feel like we're in a place where it's like we want to do it. Like, we want to have these conversations. I don't even know. I honestly don't know that there's one single thing that you can point at and be like, oh, this is why we started it. Because we've been having the conversation all off season. You know, Carl was up here, and you know, all 3 of us were kind of together and said, hey, we need to get back to doing a podcast.
Yeah. And I think Carl, like the conversations me, Carl, and Brandon have had, like just in general, Carl and Brandon have been there for me in a lot of ways too. And like just the conversations we've always had, it's like, man, we need to like there's some, like, you come out of it feeling like you could run through a brick wall. Like, you just, obviously Carl is a very motivational person too. And it just, like, the dynamic we have between us 3 is really special. And like sharing that stuff is really unique. And I think people would enjoy hearing it. And like Brandon said, it's not about the views. It's like, we're having the conversations. We're just putting a mic out now.
So what is the plan for, is this going to be like one a month, one a week, one a year? Like what is our delivery? Like, do we have a plan, or is it just like when we want to talk, we'll talk? Wait for us.
I would say we don't have a plan. I'm not confident enough to say we have a plan, but I do have a goal of trying to put one out a week. That's where I would like it to live. Any more than that seems pretty difficult at this point in our lives, to try to do more than that. But if we could do one a week, I would be happy with that for sure. And so it's it's not gonna. It's going to be difficult because when we're on the road in the middle of a tournament, it's like, hey, we need to sit down. We need to have a 2-hour-long conversation. And, you know, a lot of that's obviously probably going to be with elite guys, you know, people that are around the tournaments. have those conversations with those people because they're around. Carl's going to be at the campground. He's going to be in a bunch of them. It's not going to look the same every single time. Some of them are going to be around a campfire. Some of them are going to be inside the camper. There's probably going to be a lot of times that if I want to have one a week, it's either going to be me by myself, which seems really weird to try to do. But then there's also going to be a lot of them that me and Tiff put the kids to bed and we have an open conversation. And we talk about stuff and it's me and Tiff on there that week. And so I think just the only goal I have right now is try to stick to doing one a week, figuring out who's available to do it. Then we'll just kind of ultimately determine who's on that week.
Gotcha. So you plan it to be a guest driven podcast?
Not necessarily guest driven, like where we have to have a guest every single time. Like I said, there'll be some weeks that I just sit down and talk to the camera. But I do want to have guests for the simple fact of, like that conversation we just had a little while ago of not knowing everything and getting insight from other people, because I want to learn through this process just as much as I want to also teach other people. Right. And so if I can use someone else's wisdom to teach myself and teach other people, then perfect world, right? It's like, just, I don't know, there's so many cool things that can come out of that. And I want it to be entertaining too, right? Like I want there to be funny stories and stuff. It's not just going to be pounding down this mental clarity road. There'll be funny stories, right? I mean, we're going to have conversations about the tournaments, like what happened. So be a little bit of everything.
Kyle, are you going to stick around to do enough of them, or are you just going to be in Baja or wherever else you're heading in the world?
That's the question Brandon asked me. No, yeah, I'm going to be there as much as I possibly can, and I think I need to make more of a commitment to that. But yeah, it's important to me to have these conversations and to talk with Brandon. I mean, we have a blast doing them, and it's a unique way to have a conversation with someone that I know Brandon so well, and it's like kind of we get to bring up things that we've went through in the past. We've went through a lot together, I think, and like it's unique to be able to talk about that in ways that are it's a different format than just like having a conversation. Sometimes it allows you to open up about other things, and it's really unique, just the format of what a podcast is. And I selfishly enjoy them too. Like I enjoy being able to sit down and have a conversation with my friends, like about tough stuff. Yeah.
I think that's that's the key. Like you have to enjoy it at the end of the day. Like you have to, like what I love about a podcast is there's questions you get to ask that you would never. I mean, I don't think there's anything I'd ask you guys on camera that you know what I mean? Like I don't have but there's ways you find out things like from people that you just in normal conversation. We all talk about what's going on in our world today. We don't spend a lot of time talking about like what your life was like here and this different. And I think that's one of the biggest things that your relationship, you guys proved, because when you guys kept talking about high school and how you never would have thought, I kept thinking like there's so many people that are in school or in their first job or whatever that think this is what my life is. Like there's no way I'll ever do that because I haven't started working towards that. But you look at in high school, you were working towards lots of stuff, I'm sure, but you never imagined it being this. But I think that's a lesson in itself.
Yep.
I agree.
And just
you don't know where it's going to end up. And some people have a direction they want to head earlier than others. You never know when those paths are going to cross.
Like, for instance, Brandon was pretty dedicated on being a fisherman, like angling, like professionally. Like that was your plan A. You didn't have a plan B. You talk about it. And for me, I didn't know where I was going to go. And like I just felt like I ended up here. Like, which is an interesting way of being that, but like somehow our paths crossed, and like it's changed both our lives for the better, I think. And like that's a cool thing to be able to experience stuff with each other too, and a lot of
Yeah.
learning we've had along the way. It's just interesting perspective of like how things get to a place and trusting that process, I guess.
Avco not only makes incredible outdoor clothing, but they care about anglers with their 10% pledge. Avco and the Shed family donate at least 10% of the company's profits to conservation and making fishing better. Now back to the show. Do you know where you're getting to now? Like, where are you in 10 years?
10 years, me and Brandon are going to be filming some of the most epic outdoor content you'll ever see.
We're already doing that. It's just going to keep getting more and more epicer.
It's
more
gonna,
epicer, yeah.
Epicer. Maybe that's the podcast name. More epicer.
More epicer podcast.
No,
we always have conversations of like, what's the next step? Where can we take it? Because both of us are evolving, and we have grand plans of like trying to do more things, have bigger adventures, film more hunting content, right? Kyle, you're actually going to show up and film more hunting content.
All September, baby.
Now he's publicly held to it.
Yep.
Just want to make sure we got that on camera.
Does he not like shooting hunting content?
No, he loves it. He loves it. He enjoys it. Every time he does it, he's like, man, I wish I did this more. And I'm like,
I absolutely love it. It just, we get done with the season and I'm like, I could ride my motorcycle into Baja or hey. Yeah. But I will be filming. We're going to be filming, I put it on record. We're filming a elk hunt next year, 100% for all of September, as long as it takes.
You're a bit of like a Mr. I don't know if you watch Seinfeld at all. Maybe it missed you, but it's pretty much the world's greatest sitcom, but in history. But they had a Peterson character who would be like, this week I'm in Baja racing this, and then the next week he'd be surfing somewhere or swimming with humpback whales. You really got a wide span.
Yeah, I feel like it's sometimes I need to maybe like focus in on things, but I enjoy it. I think, it's just me. That's how my brain works.
Have you always been like that?
I think since I started video because I wanted that freedom. Like I wanted the freedom to be like, hey, I'm just going to go to Baja and like, or I'm going to go buy a motorcycle in Vietnam and ride through Vietnam, or like, I wanted to do those things. Yeah. But like, that's like, those are things I wanted to do when I started doing this. And now I'm realizing to like get to another level, I think I have to rein that freedom in a little bit too. Like you can't just be you can't be a wild cannon and have focus. Like, like that's the other side. Brandon talks about it in our podcast too, about like that dedication to winning every tournament. He knows he's not doing the things to do it, but he knows there's important things in his life also that's other than that. Like he wants to spend time with his family, and those things. And now I'm like on the other side of that, where it's like, hey, like to be this, you kind of have to give up this, you know what I mean? Like, so it's a weird sacrifice you have to make in those things. And through friends and everything, you realize like, okay, like to be a better filmmaker, you might not take that 2-week trip into Baja and do this for fun, So it's just it's interesting to be able to figure those things out too.
Brandon, how different is he than he was in high school? Or is he the same dude?
No. I mean, I say no. I also didn't know him as well in high school as I do now. He doesn't have a puka shell necklace or earrings now, so I feel like he evolved from where he was.
That was ruthless.
Well, I mean, you get the opportunity to explain. Who was Brandon Palaniuk in high school?
Like I said, I didn't know Brandon too well either, but he was 2 years older.
Yeah.
But definitely, I knew he is obsessed with fishing. I could say that for sure. Uh, he you could tell he was obsessive in what he was going after, because like you'd see a bass boat in the high school parking lot and you'd be like, oh, I know who that is and where he's going after school, kind of thing. Like, so you kind of had that understanding of what Brandon was. But like you said, we weren't close, man. Like
No.
we didn't really have that friendship. I didn't know you that well other than sports.
All right. What do you guys, if you could, and I know you want your kids to be healthy, you want all those sort of things are givens. But if you had to pick one thing, like this is one experience I need to experience before I die, I want to hear it from both of you.
That's a big one.
Great one. It's a great one. There's a lot of things to. I don't know if there's one thing that outweighs another. I don't have full control over this because I don't know what my kids will enjoy. But I so badly want to be there and watch both of my daughters harvest an elk, especially with a bow. I've already seen Cora catch her first fish. Like that was amazing. But even at bedtime, I'd tell her this story sometimes, and it's pretty much a story of what I envision that moment being. And so I tell her this story of like, once upon a time there was this little girl named Cora, and I go through the process of what it'd be like driving up the mountains, and you got, this foggy morning. And so I'm pretty much telling her the story of that moment that I would love to happen. And the same goes for Kier. Like, there's just something very spiritual about that. And I know how I feel when that happened, like when I accomplish that. And I want to see that and live that through my kids.
I think that's fatherhood. You know what I mean? Like, I think instantly you
Yeah.
have a kid and you're like, yeah, everything I wanted to do is now secondary to seeing them do it. It's
Yeah.
truly great. Kyle, you
Yeah.
don't have that to lean on, so you're going to have to just.
I feel like that's a hard one to follow up with in general.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, I want to have a family someday. And I know that's like maybe that's something that I want. And like, if it happens, it happens. But I think like Brandon said, like that's the ultimate purpose you have, like to see your daughters become amazing human beings and like be able to see them experience stuff gives you so much purpose. And someday to have a family and to be able to, be connected with people that I love and be surrounded by those people. That's all I want. That's all. Like,
That's
I think
changed though, hasn't it?
100%.
I mean,
like
you used to not feel that way as much, right?
yeah, I think in like the last 3 to 5 years, I've really like realized, like, not just because you having the girls and stuff and like having family, but like, I think as you get older, you're like, what is my purpose in this life? And I think it's like bigger than like a couple years ago. It was like, I want to travel to every country and do all this stuff. And like, that has a certain bit of like wow to it and fun. But like, when I see you hanging with the girls and like my brother having his daughter, like, I'm just like, that's the purpose of life, like, is like family and loved ones and being surrounded by people. And like, that is like the substance of life. Like you guys said, like, you have trophies and you're like, traveling could be your trophy, or like it could be anything can be your trophy, this lustrous thing that you think's beautiful. But it might not ever have as much substance as like having a family, seeing your daughters hunt elk and you being there to be there and like see it and experience it with them. And that's like, I think to me, that's like the magic of life. And I think sometimes it's easy to overlook those things, and a good perspective shift on it will do wonders.
Yeah. And I mean, me and Brandon have had this conversation tons of times. I've said it on here tons of times. Look at our jobs for even an example. You know what I mean? We get to work in a really cool environment and get to see some really cool things. But at the end of the year, when somebody's like, oh, so what was the best moments? It's never something that happened on stage. Like if you say what the best stage moments, I'll come up with some. I'm sure you can come up with some fish catches and you can come up with some, shots that you got. But ultimately it's like that afternoon when we were stuck here and we just did this, or that day we'll probably just end up joking about, can you imagine how many times Brandon had to fix his freaking light on this whole podcast?
It's so dumb. There's a switch for it. I'm gonna fix it.
He takes so much pride in that thing, and even on our podcast, I think you got to sit closer to the other side. The sensor picks you up, Brandon.
Yeah, it is really causing him troubles.
Well, it's a motion detected light, so that it's not just on all the time.
Yeah. Not meant for podcasts.
An on switch where you can just turn it on. I don't know. It's driving me nuts, but whatever. Maybe it'll stay on longer. I don't know. I switched the settings. I've never messed with it. I probably should have sat on the other side. Whatever.
I've just thought it was funny.
I want to hear yours,
Dave. The whole way through. My what?
I want to, like, what's the one thing that you want to experience?
That is a tough question.
I know you just asked it.
I know, but I never thought of an answer when I asked it. I just wanted to know from you guys. It's going to sound super sappy, but I mean, I just want lots. I mean, life is literally just about memories. That's all it is. Like, that's all that really matters. You will not remember the truck you're driving. But you'll remember the laughs that you had in that truck. You'll remember, you know what I mean? Like it's about collecting memories. And I don't have like a moment, like, I mean, to see my kids both healthy, successful, happy, most importantly, happy in their life is the huge goal. But I really just want to have as many memories as possible. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's collection of memories, and go make memories. Like, there's not some, I mean, everybody's got bucket list. I mean, I'd like to catch a tiger fish. I'd like to do silly things that seem simple, but you guys made this way too deep, so I'm not going to go there.
Well, you said one experience. You said like
no, I hear you, but yeah, no, it's just to collect those. Here's one thing I'd like to do, and this is for my son. It's a simple thing. He's obsessed with New York. I want to see his friggin' face when he goes to New York. I want to be with him. You know what I mean? Like, that's something I've started to do a lot in the last number of years, because my wife and my son and my daughter, but my wife and my son have this outwardly, they're just always happy. Like, where a lot of people wake up, they're just always happy. And like when you travel with them, and Cadence is like that too, but when you travel with them, you see how all the ordinary that you walk past every day isn't ordinary to them. All of a sudden they're like, wow, look at that. And, they're just very, so one thing that I've worked on is I've tried to see things through their eyes. Like when I travel and I'm like, oh, I got to go to the airport again. Like my son's like, oh, I'll go to the airport. I mean, I love flying. So that's one thing that I know in the last couple of years, just living through their eyes, like trying to see things through their eyes. Like, so I'd love to see his face there. But yeah, no, there's a lot of little things like that. It's not one thing. It's a bad question to ask. Who would ask such a shitty question? I want to go catch
a Nile River perch.
Yeah.
And I want Kyle to film that experience, right? Go catch a Nile River perch. Go hang out with the tribe, cook it up.
Yeah.
Is
that where ultimately you two end up, just with tribesmen? Like I could see a more there was part of me that figured you would
Could be.
always be a tournament angler, but I could see you being a
Yeah.
tribesman. Like
Yeah,
we
could
just
be.
went to shoot this thing, and
We'll
It's a
both be in
simpler
our
life
late
now.
50s, just wearing loincloths, like living going from tribe to tribe, learning the tribal ways.
I could see that.
Possible. I don't know.
I could
Who
see
knows?
that. Was my answer okay, or was it pretty bad? I think it was bad.
I think it's good.
It was great.
Yeah.
There's no wrong
I think
answer. Your life,
I think
the experience
something of
you want.
all of it, like all three of us in some way, it's not about us, which is
Yeah.
interesting too. Like it's about like seeing other people experience something, or like the people we love. Like that's an interesting like take on it too.
I think as you age, that's just also like, you get less selfish. You get the exact same thing that I said about Jack seeing his eyes when he sees New York. I already saw that with Cadence. I saw her eyes when she met her service dog. You know what I mean? Like as a parent, there is nothing like freaking nothing. I don't care if a Lambo rolls up in the driveway and they're like, "Hey, this is yours." It would never make me feel like that made me feel. So it. Well, let's talk about something that has not near as deep, but it has a bit of a spiritual feeling to me, and I think it does to you guys. And I want you to, if you'll do this, the first morning of the Bassmaster Classic, take me through what that feels like when your feet hit the ground to when you take off.
There is a sense of awe.
And sorry to interrupt you, but Kyle, I want this from you too. So be thinking. Go ahead, Brent.
I figured it'd be easier for me to answer than him. And there's never the same every single time, just because of the venue and things like that. But there is a sense of awe of like the crowd and the magnitude of it, and what it means, and it has a very hopeful feeling around it, I guess, right? And there's this unknown, especially day one of the Bassmaster Classic, right? You got thousands of fans there. Everyone's motors are idling. It's, typically chilly mornings, and you're bundled up, and you can see the heat coming off the motors, and there's a little bit of fog lifting off, and the sun's barely starting to break. There's interviews, and it's like the beauty in it. And I do this every single classic, is I try to find a place that I can get away from it and kind of be in the chaos, like watch the chaos, but find the solitude in that chaos, or like the quiet in all of it. And it's amazing how, like you said, it's kind of spiritual it is to see that when you care about something that much. And I've always liked finding a quiet place, typically with headphones in. And so it's like I'm not hearing the interviews. I mean, I love your voice, but I tune it out sometimes at the classic. You're not hearing you're seeing all the things happening, but you're in your own head. And every time I've done that, it is a spiritual, like weird feeling to be in that moment. And I don't know what is at the root of that. If it's fantasizing about it since I was 8 years old, right, of winning that event, or if it's something bigger than that. But it feels like at day one of the Bassmaster Classic, there's a lot of unknown, and it seems like everything is right in the world.
Yeah.
When you're sitting there.
I think there's a certain sense of like grandness to it, and I think that's something that I pick up like from even the first classic was like, wow. this is like, I can't believe bass fishing is like this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like from a total outsider's perspective, I was like, this is insane. But also like, I think for myself too, is like, it's a what if moment. Like, it's like, if you win this, Brandon, this changes your life in multiple ways. But it's like a what if you do win this, and like what the story will be, and like the emotions of it and what it will take. And like for me, it's really special there. But like also you go backstage to the press room, and then there's brownies too. So then it's like
He knows at the end of the day there's going to be a solid stash of A+ brownies back in the media room.
Emily and Mandy, the last couple of years, props to those people, because they've had the best classic snacks out there. Yeah.
It's all about the snacks.
Yeah, you go to the big show, you got the best snacks.
They're all gone by the time I get off stage. The best. I get the picked over.
Now you know why.
Exactly. Oh, there's a chicken cutlet left. You go to cut it, and your plastic fork breaks. No, it's weird, and it's funny because me and Kyle probably look at it much more similar than you, because you're actually competing in it. But to me, like, there's just such it's like a realm of wonderment. Like, it's just, to me, it's like you grow up and it's the Bassmaster. And like when I talk to you, when I talk to either of you, when I see Jake on the dock, when you see everybody, when I see Lisa, whoever, everybody, media members, it's like everybody, like, you don't have to say it, but it's our Christmas. You know what I mean? Like, it's special. Like, everyone know, and it's special for everyone for different reasons, but it's almost like you've seen this thing happen so many times, but this is your time. Like, you're part of it, whether you're covering it or you're competing in it. And for me, it's not even just the event. Like, it's going there, like the drive from the hotel to, and I know you normally stay out by the lake, but the drive from the hotel to the lake, it's wild, because you're driving, and sometimes for a long time you're driving and there's nobody, because it's ridiculous. 3:30 in the morning, there's nobody on the roads. But as you get there, you start to see, like, every car that's in front of you is turning off on that road, and every car behind you is turning off. It's just such, like, it really feels to me like the whole sport is coming together. You know what I mean? Like, you've got all these people coming from different parts of the world, and they're all coming for this event. But I thought you guys would give me pretty good answers on that. I was not expecting the brownies, Kyle. I mean,
I'll save you one this year.
Are they really that good? What makes them so good?
They're just like, they're the classic Ghirardelli brownies, but like also you just got off the water for 8 hours and you're just like, dude, like anything after
Coffee and brownies.
Yeah.
Do the camera guys ever get around a big plate of brownies while the anglers are waiting and just bitch about them? Oh, your angler's nowhere near as bad as my angler.
We did have a cameraman, like a personal cameraman meetup in Lake Fork. We went to the bar in between the tournaments, and all the camera guys, we had a good old time. Good old fashioned
on Night of Champions. Kyle's been setting up the Night of Champions, because they're not allowed to be at Night of Champions. So then he's set up a cameraman date night.
Find the diviest bar we can and just have a time.
To give out awards? Does anybody get to do a speech?
No awards. We should come up with a Cameraman of the Year award. I feel like Jake wins that every year, though, so it's kind of just.
You guys got to sing. You guys got to. The award last year was what? Hanging out with. What was that lady's name? That was her birthday. Was it last year?
Big Deborah or something, or
Big Deborah. Everybody loves Big Deborah.
She's a nice lady. She's a nice lady from Lake Fork area.
Wow, we're going there this year, and now you've made this all uncomfortable for us all, Brandon. Thanks very much, dickhead. Is she a good singer?
She's you might ask Cole, Milliken's camera guy, how nice she is. She took a liking to him for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's like a whole other story.
There's a whole story.
Well, dude, dudes, I want your. I mean, I really think your podcast is going to be something special. My only doubt is that you'll keep doing it. Like, I really feel like you could Derby boy us, get us all excited, and then poof, gone, just out of our life.
Yeah.
What is going to keep you doing it this time? A public announcement? Like, if you just the fact that we've done this podcast, does that make you feel you have to do a few? No,
We've already done 3.
Yeah,
So
strong.
It's 3 in like 2 weeks, pretty much. So we've done it. I don't know. I don't know what. I think we're just in a different headspace than when we started it before. It might have a little bit more purpose to it than it did before. And just being more disciplined on continuing that and doing it. I don't know. I mean, it helps that a few people watch it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that the views don't matter, because if it just had 0 views, then I'd be like, well, let's quit buying cameras and setting camera gear up, and we'll just keep having the same conversation.
We'll just talk to each other.
Yeah, like we're already talking to each other. Other people obviously aren't watching it, so why? But as long as there are a few people that keep watching it, then it's at least motivation that, hey, we can keep doing it, even if it's a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
Doing successful things is more fun.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Well, what did I really interrupt you saying, Kyle?
No, I think like discipline's going to be the thing. I think like where we are is that's a huge thing, and obviously life on the road, it makes it exponentially more difficult. We don't just have a set that we can step into. We were talking about the other day, is just like popping in and talking is much easier rather than like, oh, we got to set the stuff up, do the thing. But I think like we have a lot more discipline than what we did a couple years ago too.
I've run a Yamaha outboard for over 30 years. It has got me home safe each and every time. If you enjoy this podcast, remember, Yamaha supports it, and they care enough about you to make this ad read very short. Now back to the show. All right, I got one last question for you both. Tell me something about each other that you're going to have any chance to talk about each other. Give me a story, Kyle, about Brandon Palaniuk that nobody knows.
Let me see. There's something up there. Little known fact is I actually taught Brandon how to bass fish. Okay, I know it's
a real
some made up bullshit.
Yeah.
Come on.
Something about Brandon that people don't know. We share so much stuff.
Tell me a stupid story. Oh my gosh!
Trying to think. What do you got? You got anything?
Well,
I feel like we've talked about a lot of them. I think one of the things that you can actually see it on the videos is like me and Brandon are a little bit like brothers in that way of like we're just kind of like competitive towards each other, and occasionally in the camper we get in some wrestling matches. We're at Sabine River weigh-in, and turns out Brandon's really good at wrestling. He's a state champ, and I have that like little brother effect where I like still think I can like challenge. Like I always think that.
I've seen that.
But I'm 0 for 4, and one of these days I'm gonna win one. It just statistically speaking, I think I can do it. But yeah, we've got some pretty hefty wrestling matches in the camper. He's just better than me so far, but eventually I'm going to get him.
All right.
Yeah.
Brandon, that was a horrible story, really. That wasn't, I mean, everybody's seen you two wrestle, really. So just give me another horrible story and this will all end, I guess.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean, since he was so nice at admitting that he beat me, I will tell one of him beating me. There was a time where he challenged me to where he could use traditional tackle. Right? He could throw anything in my boat, and I had to throw gummy worms, and I beat him.
and
Heavy.
like a Finding Nemo play rod.
Yeah, I had a little tiny kid's rod,
Yeah.
a pack of gummy worms, and I beat him with a pack of gummy worms. And he had full access to my entire boat, all my rods, reels, tackle, everything. Well, the next year, we do it again, except this time it was just head to head. Did we have to pick one? We had to pick one bait. I think we had to pick one bait. Kyle grabs a freaking drop shot, the same setup that I almost won Lay Lake with. And he beats me. And we filmed the whole entire thing, and mysteriously the footage has just disappeared.
Yeah. Oops, I formatted it.
Oops, sorry, I don't know where that hard drive went, Kyle.
Well, Brandon's going to talk smack on that. I have one last little story.
Now we're getting this is a freaking podcast.
All right. So, when you see someone that like they're just good at stuff. Like Brandon's kind of one of those people.
I already know where this is going.
He does. He's good. Well, one of the classics, I was like, dude, like whatever. We're gonna go, like late at night. We're gonna go play Top Golf, and you go over there and you see Brandon pick up his driver and goes to swing, and you're like, oh dear God, I finally found the thing that he's bad at. And it was a glorious night. Like just to see this atrocious golfer taking hacks. It's just like, like people that are just good at everything. And then you find the one thing. We found the one thing that night. And it made him human, in that way. And it was nice. It was a good thing.
Him and Carl really lean into that one. Yeah.
Charles Barkley's no good at golf either. I mean, does he look bad at it?
Oh, the swing
swing's rough. Like he doesn't even make the right sound when he hits the ball.
No,
it's like the ball.
If he'll whiff more than he'll hit.
Why is golf your nemesis?
I think I try to baseball swing it too much. I don't know.
It is
I don't know. Like if you are at the same Top Golf as us, you don't want to be on the same floor because you could be 7 people down or something, and you are in the danger zone.
It's
to the point where you're like, how can someone be this bad at something? That's where it feels.
And the harder I try, the worse it gets.
It does that. Yeah. Surprisingly, I really want to go to Top Golf with you now all of a sudden. Like I had no interest in it earlier, but now I'd really like to see you suck.
We can go this year at the Classic.
Let's do it.
Since I'll just be working. Working expos and things.
I'll be busy.
Me too. We'll both be busy.
You will be, but you'll be busy between the hours of 10 and 6. My hours will start at 3:30.
Okay, well, we won't go early in the morning.
All right, fine. Well, any different feeling going into this year? Did you need to go to a sweat lodge or go into a darkness chamber to find your happiness again?
No, I think it's just I'm thankful that we start fresh.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's going to happen. We're walking into a season in a few weeks that, coming off my worst season ever, I could come into the best year of my entire career. You just don't know. And so I feel like I've been doing the right things to allow that to happen. It's just whether or not it does, whether or not that's in the cards.
All right. Well, I think you'll have a big year, and
I feel like I'm in a good headspace for it. At least. Whether or not I catch them will to be determined.
We have weekly therapy sessions, so you'll be good.
Can we get a prediction on the AOI for next year, for 2025? You did it in 23, and Brandon won.
I did, and I think I doubled down the next year, and he didn't. So I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't right now. I think I'm better at those when we're all together.
There needs to be at least
when
I
feel the. Yeah, I need to feel the vibe. Like I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's a nice studio. I don't know what its true vibe is. I need to pick it up. But I'll throw out a. I mean, I'm wrong a lot, so I'm not. Except for when I bet on the Kansas City Chiefs. People hate me. People hate me. They're really, a lot of people are hating me. Brandon, you don't even watch football, so it doesn't insult you, but
I just live vicariously through you.
yeah, it's a good time. Times are good. It's a great podcast they're doing. I don't know what it's called. The Outdoor Burrito,
Yeah,
Vandy
like
and
that.
BP, whatever it ends up being called. It is something you guys should listen to because to me, I said it when I posted it, my world is happier when I hear you guys talking about some of the stuff you talk about. So thank you for doing what you're doing, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. It's always a joyful time.
Get to hang out with a friend.
Hey, and you fixed your friggin' light, bro. Congratulations.
I know. It was just
hasn't gone
one
out
switch
since
over.
You turned it on.
It was just one switch over. I don't know what it meant, but yeah, it hasn't turned off since. Should have done that at the beginning.
All right. Thanks, dude.
All right,
See you guys.
See ya.
That's it. That's all. Good times with good friends. I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure to check out their podcast. Make sure to subscribe to their channel. I'll put the links down below. And if you enjoyed this show, make sure to like, comment, subscribe here. Even if it's just a thumbs up, every single one of those helps us stroke the algorithm. To the fine folks that listen on streaming channels, make sure to leave a review and give us a rating there so we can keep doing this. I mean, I'm going to keep doing it, but you guys would make it easier. Have a good week. Enjoy being. And as always, Bob Cobb, take it away.
Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe because Bob Cobb of the Bassmasters told you to. You hear?